We are seeing over the last 12 months a slow recovery in our job market. In the last 6 months, we have seen that accelerate, but not sufficiently to reduce unemployment to anything comparable to a full employment economy. This year, so far, however, we have generated 600,000 jobs in the private sector. That is in sharp contrast to January of 2009, when President Obama took office, when we were losing 700,000 jobs a month. Losing 700,000 jobs a month. But despite this improvement in the job market, we have a long, long way to go. And it is particularly troubling to be once again anticipating a vote tomorrow on the extension of unemployment benefits. These benefits lapsed weeks ago, and meanwhile, millions of Americans are without access to unemployment funds, the insurance funds that they paid each week in their daily wages for the time that they never hoped would come, but has come, where they could rely upon some support as they look for work. In Rhode Island, the unemployment rate is 12%, absolutely horrendous. And we're seeing more and more of this unemployment being long-term, not a temporary loss, but a long-term. Nearly half, 45.5% of the unemployed have been out of work for more than 6 months. And in those 6 months, the excess savings you might have, the ability to cut a few corners to make it to week by week, are less and less effective in simply keeping the lights on and keeping the family together. And then when you take away your unemployment compensation, people are frankly becoming desperate. And yet, many on the other side are completely indifferent to this. It's not their problem. Well, it is their problem. It's our problem. If we cannot do this, then we are failing in a basic function, which is to provide support to Americans in a crisis. And that's what we must do. People are looking for work. The average individual has been looking for 35 weeks for work. That's almost a year, a big part of a year. And yet, in the midst of this economic downturn, 14.6 million unemployed Americans, my colleagues on the other side, have forced us to go through procedural hoops to get a vote on unemployment compensation extension. The Senate has failed on 3 occasions to pass this extension, not because there is not a majority of senators who want this, but because procedurally we need 60 votes to end debate and vote on the measure. We've let this program lapse for short periods, and now we've been lapsed since June 2nd, and that is unacceptable. There's no other word for it but obstruction, of stopping something that has been done routinely on a bipartisan measure basis in every major job recession in this country in our lifetime. This should be a simple bipartisan endeavor. George W. Bush had a period of time where we had a recession in the job market, and we, on a bipartisan basis, extended unemployment insurance. There was no repeated delays, stretching it out. Only 2-month extensions or 3-month extensions could be considered. It was done because we had to help Americans who needed the help and who had contributed to the fund through their unemployment compensation insurance. We have never failed to extend unemployment compensation while the unemployment rate was at least 7.4%. Today, if your state has 7.4%, you're in recovery. You're in great shape. 12% in Rhode Island. If I go around the country, there are too many states like Rhode Island with 12%, 10%, 11%. The national unemployment rate is over 9%. So this is an historical anomaly. We have routinely, on a bipartisan basis, extended unemployment compensation as long as the unemployment rate has been at least 7.4%. But now, in the midst of a much worse national economic crisis, my colleagues are simply indifferent to it. Most of them. I'm hopeful that tomorrow we will rally one or two who recognize the need to respond to the needs of their constituents. And you know, we've extended it for much longer periods of time than the current period. In the 1970s, under President Ford and Carter, again, through two presidents, one Republican, one Democrat, 3 years and 1 month of extended unemployment benefits. In the 1980s, under President Reagan, yes, we extended unemployment compensation benefits without paying for it under Ronald Reagan on a bipartisan basis to help Americans. 2 years and 10 months. In the 1990s, under President Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, and President Clinton, 2 years and 6 months. So we're hardly at the point where these benefits have gone on so long that they're intolerable. Again, routinely we've done this on a bipartisan basis. Republican presidents, Democratic presidents, Republican Congresses, Democratic Congress. What I would argue has changed is our colleagues on the other side. Now, we are going through another procedural vote. And at the end of the day, on the final merits, this could pass by 75, 80, 90 votes, because no one wants to be accused of not extending unemployment benefit. But this whole procedural strategy of delay after delay after delay effectively has denied millions of people, not just the dollars, which are important, but just the sense, the small sense of security that they can rely on these funds. That there is some place they can go and get. In Rhode Island, the average weekly benefit is $360 a month. That they can get at least $360 a month to feed their family, to provide for the essentials of life. When that's stripped away, they lose more than just the $360. They lose the sense that there's anything out there that's going to help them. Robert Bixby, president of the Concord Coalition, who's been throughout the years one of the most consistent in terms of fiscal responsibility, put it well. In his words, as a deficit hawk, I won't worry about extending unemployment benefits. It is not going to add to the long-term structural deficit, and it does address a serious need. I just feel like unemployment benefits wandered onto the wrong street corner at the wrong time, and now they are getting mugged. Well, that's what's going on here. They're just mugging a program that the American people need. Just, it's close at hand. It can invoke this notion of responsible deficit reduction. You know, where was all this responsible deficit reduction rhetoric when they were proposing Medicare Part D? A huge, huge benefit to the pharmaceutical industry without any payment, the largest expansion of entitlement, which does add to the structural deficit. Because year in and year out, when you get to be 65 years old, you qualify for Part D. Unemployment benefits, countercyclical, people pay into it, build up, we hope, the trust funds in the states, and then when you meet a point at which you need it, it should be there, and it should be there now. The other point, too, I think is important to make, is that for every dollar of unemployment benefits, there is $1.90 of economic activity. This is a stimulus measure also. At a time when we're seeing a fragile recovery, we need to put more muscle behind the recovery. So not only are we giving people the chance to just make ends meet, when they take their unemployment compensation and their other resources and go into the marketplace, it provides increased economic activity. In fact, if we don't have this increased economic activity, there is a danger that this recovery will be very slow, painfully slow. And that would be unfortunate, because what we measure in terms of economic recovery is measured in American families by the opportunity to send children to school, by the opportunity to provide a little bit more for their families. And if that is inhibited over months and months and months, then those who suffer are the American family. There are other aspects of this. For example, in the Joint Economic Committee estimated that by the end of 2010, this year, 290,000 unemployed disabled workers. These are individuals who work but have a disability. We'll exhaust the benefits. Now, if these individuals choose to finally drop out of the labor market and go on to the Social Security disability rolls, to go through the process of being qualified and approved for disability, over the lifetime, this could result in $24.2 billion in cost, contrasted to the $721 million this year that would be, this group would receive in extended benefits. It's a simple sort of issue here. I mean, do we want to keep people in the workforce, or at least keep them looking for work with unemployment benefits? Or we want them to say, I'll give up, I'll simply declare I can't work again, I'll go and see if my disability can be covered by Social Security disability insurance, and I, for the rest of my life, will collect my Social Security disability, even though I'd really like to work. That's another aspect of this problem. So we have a challenge. The challenge tomorrow, when we greet our new colleague from West Virginia, is to stand up and extend unemployment benefits. Once again, if we look at history, this should have been done weeks ago on a strong bipartisan basis, putting aside the relative politics of the moment and concentrating on what we should do for the American people. Tomorrow we'll have a chance to do that, and I hope we do.